He was just being kind of a good citizen. That's the thing about Clint. He makes these commitments out of a good heart. And once he makes that commitment, my God, he will stick to that commitment.
I enjoyed it because I got to work, I got to meet an awful lot of people in the community that I had never met before, even though I'd been there many years. And I got to see what people's problems were, and you get to see what is really concerning people out there.
But one person now seldom seen with the mayor was Sandra Locke. By 1987, the two were drifting apart, although Clint actively championed Locke's ambitions to direct.
He was, supportive to a fault of Sandra. I think she held him back. Clint cast her frequently just because he was fond of her, but he's neither the first star nor the last who has taken care of a loved one by giving her roles.
During his tenure as mayor, the 57-year-old also satisfied his creative side. First, he directed and starred in the hit military drama Heartbreak Ridge, set prior to the U.S. invasion of Grenada. Eastwood followed the film with a highly personal project, one he'd dreamed of for years. Bird told the complex story of jazz musician Charlie Parker. Clint had been fascinated with the saxophonist ever since he saw Bird play in the 1940s.
I mean, it's very difficult to get a movie about jazz made in the first place. That it would have been really difficult for someone else without his influence and his passion to be able to get the film made.
For Eastwood, whose self-control was legendary, it was a chance to study a man whose artistic discipline was overwhelmed by self-destructive addictions to drugs and alcohol.
Would I go to some little cat up in the house somewhere and pay him $10 for a little bit of peace? And you trying to tell me that this is the man I'm supposed to stay away from? Mr. Gillespie, my comrade in arms. That is what I call paradox.
He was more than generous, and he gave me the greatest opportunities of my whole career, not just as an artist, but as a man, because I had to learn how to walk through fear. I never done anything like that. I never played a character that emotional.
He loved the telling of that story. One time, we were filming a little scene, and in the darkness, I feel him come right up to my shoulder, and he whispers in my ear, "I really don't care if anybody sees this movie. This is beautiful."
Like Charlie Parker, Eastwood had gradually earned the respect of his peers by following his own creative path.
Thank you very much. That was excellent.
He'd also become a master of improvisation, keeping the mood on his set spontaneous and open to new ideas.
Charlie Parker practiced very hard to get where he was, but then he was very radical in his approach, and I must say I shoot completely free. I don't have storyboards, and if ideas change along the way, they change. I do a lot of improvising.
He speaks the tongue of a jazz musician, and it's different. It really is different. That's always been his soul. Whether he's editing a movie or directing or whatever, he has a jazz sensibility.
It looks effortless, but it's very complicated to be simple. And he's like it's like his persona, which is very cool and calm, but there's a lot going on underneath it. There's a lot of passion and a great deal of understanding of what it is to be human.
Despite strong reviews, Bird fared poorly at the American box office. But in Europe, where Eastwood was a figure of high critical respect, reviewers hailed Bird as one of the finest films about jazz ever made. At Cannes, its director was delighted when Forrest Whitaker received Best Actor honors for the title role.
Internationally, the film was a massive success. It won 2 Cannes Film Festival awards. It won all these other awards all over the world. I feel that there's a strong bond and connection, and this film brought us together. I mean, when I directed my first film for HBO, I said, "You want anybody to come and look at the movie, give you any notes or anything?" Clint was the only person I could think of call. Go in a movie theater, there he shows up. Goes in, sits down. We sit out in the parking lot talking about the film. He's always been there for me.
In 1988, 57-year-old Clint Eastwood completed his 2-year term as mayor of Carmel. He was satisfied with his accomplishments in office, and some friends felt the experience had benefited Clint as a person.
He had sort of this avoidance of the public issues. Interviews, he put them off, postponed them. He felt privacy invasion. But when he went through that public period, he realized that he had to be a much more public figure.
Later that year, the actor returned to a more familiar role, Dirty Harry in The Deadpool. Although the film was commercially successful, critics were mostly unimpressed. Clint's next movie, the comedy Pink Cadillac, was also viewed as a disappointment, but his off-screen chemistry with supporting player Frances Fisher set off sparks from day one.
I locked eyes with him. It was like, oh my God, that's Clint Eastwood. That's my boss. So I said, thank you very much for hiring me for that part, blah, blah, blah. And I remember he put his arm around me and he said, thank you very much for doing this. I think we're gonna have a good time. And I felt safe when I met him. You know, he just knows how to put his arm around a gal. And he gets them every time.
The growing relationship between Clint Eastwood and Frances Fisher came as the actor was making a final break with Sandra Locke. In 1989, as tensions between the two increased, Locke filed a palimony suit against Eastwood. The ensuing court battle was a painful experience for the intensely private filmmaker. And when lawyers finally reached a settlement nearly 2 years later, Eastwood was relieved to move on. At age 59, Clint traveled to Africa to direct and star in White Hunter, Black Heart. Eastwood portrayed a filmmaker inspired by John Huston, who confronts the darkness in his soul during a shoot based on the making of The African Queen. For Clint, the film was an invigorating change of pace.
I don't think he seeks to please the public, but he will not embarrass himself. That's a marvelous thing about Clint. I've never seen him embarrass himself on screen. I have, but I've never seen him do it.
He's unpredictable but inevitable. You know, he's going where he's going, but he doesn't. You have no idea how he's going to get there, and I like that.
Both White Hunter, Black Heart, and the 1990 action drama The Rookie opened to mixed critical reaction. But the 61-year-old's next turn behind the camera would receive a very different response and bring Eastwood a new generation of admirers. Unforgiven was a project Clint had reflected on for nearly a decade before he felt it was finally time.
He knew it was a good script, and he was waiting, as he said, to grow into it, because he had to be of a certain age.
Rolling. Action. Okay.
The story of a retired bounty hunter forced to kill again and face his bloody past, Unforgiven appealed to Eastwood as a shattering commentary on the effects of violence.
Yeah, oh, that's perfect, just like that.
His enthusiasm also helped corral a superb cast, including Gene Hackman, Morgan Freeman, and Richard Harris.
I always felt that if this was going to be the last Western that I did, this would be the perfect last Western, because it sort of demythizes, if there is such a word, the whole Western concept and the whole idea of Western heroics.
It's a hell of a thing, killing a man. You take away all he's got, and all he's ever gonna have.
Yeah. Well, I guess they had it coming.
We all have it coming, kid.
Bill Money was a different character than he'd played. You know, he was a broken down, you know, remorseful man. This was a film where everybody was tainted. There truly were no heroes.
In Unforgiven, it's not a very clear line of right, wrong, morality, amorality, who's the hero, who's not. That's an embrace of human nature, and I think Clint understands about that, about right and wrong.